What's up, YouTube? It's the Console Samurai from Grown Ups Gaming, and I've brought up the topic of backwards compatibility on my channel before, but I read an article over the weekend on GameSpot that actually kind of brought to light some of the technical difficulties and some of the reasons why we don't have backwards compatibility on the PS4 and the Xbox One, even though those are the systems we would expect to see them on. Now, backwards compatibility, for those who don't know, is the ability to play older media, such as DVDs, older games of either console or PC, on newer hardware. A DVD can be played on a Blu-ray. PlayStation 1 games can be played on PlayStation 2. You can play older Windows games on Windows Vista 8, 8.1, and presumably 10 when that comes out. So, but there in the gaming industry, there's always been some form of backwards compatibility. If you go all the way back, and I mean all the way back to the Atari 7800. The Atari 7800 was the third console that Atari made, and it was backwards compatible, oddly, to the first console, the 2600, but not the 5200. I'm not sure why. And then you go on to Sega. Sega, the first console didn't really get a lot of publicity, but the Master System was backwards compatible to I believe it was called the Game 1000, and there also was a way for the next console, the Genesis, to be backwards compatible to the Master System, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Of course, you have the PlayStation. PlayStation 2 was fully backwards compatible. Early models of the PlayStation 3 were backwards compatible to PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1. Microsoft's Xbox 360 was backwards compatible to some of the original Xbox games, not all of them. And truthfully, all of these companies have done it in a different way, but they've all done it. Nintendo, until very recently, had no backwards compatibility. The backwards compatibility they had came in with the Wii. The Wii was backwards compatible to the GameCube, and up until 2011, the Wii had that backwards compatibility. Now, the reason why the PS4 and the Xbox One don't have it is because the processor power required to run a PS3 game or an Xbox 360 game they're not available as extra in the PS4 and the Xbox One. Not to mention the fact they work on completely different chipsets. So you would actually have to essentially have at least the baseline PS3 and Xbox 360 in the next gen console, which I understand. I realize, they said, oh well, that would raise the price by $200. Okay, that makes sense. $600 would be a lot of money. I mean, we saw that with the PS3, the early versions of the PS3. The reason why it was taken out because the early version was $600, because it could play PS2 and it could play PS1. It could play all these games. So they had to add the extra hardware. People got upset. They pulled it out, dropped the price. That was the price we paid for getting a more affordable console. So yes, that makes perfect sense. But going back to what the Sega Genesis did, Sega Genesis had something called the power-based converter, which plugged into the Genesis, and you could put Master System games into this thing. It was an add-on accessory. You had to buy it separately, obviously. It was an aftermarket add-on that let you play these old games. Now, the thought occurs to me, with the technical details of how you would get these games to play, and you would emulate them onto the newer gen consoles, you need to have 10 times the processor power to do it. Or you'd have to have something else. You'd have to have everything else added into the console. So the thought occurs to me, why can't we do what Sega Genesis did? What, 20, 25 years ago? Why can't we have an add-on to the PS4 or the Xbox One for $200? Maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more, around that region, around that price range. Why can't we have an add-on that actually does let you play 100% of the PS3, PS2, and PS1 games for the PS4, or allows you to play all of the Xbox One games and all the Xbox 360 games on the Xbox, or not You know what I mean with the Xbox One. The original Xbox and the 360. $200 is a lot of money, but it depends on what kind of collection you have. Looking at my DVD shelf over here, three I have three shelves full of just PlayStation 2. I have one shelf, well, a shelf and a half full of just Xbox 360 games. I have several shelves full of PS1 games. The idea of being able to connect something to my PS4 and be able to play 100% of my PS3 games, my PS2 games, my PS1 games, all on one piece of equipment is really good. In a case like mine, I would be willing to play. I would be willing to pay the extra $200 for the PS4 to be completely backwards compatible, or for the Xbox One to be completely backwards compatible, because right now I have the PS4, the PS3, the PS2, the PS1, the Xbox One, the 360 out right now. For the $200 extra on the PS4, I could get rid of the 3, the 2, and the 1. That would save a lot of room. I could do so much with that. And we have, in the case of PlayStation, we have PlayStation Now, which is it's a great idea. I think it does need more developing, but it is a great idea. But the issue that I do have with the digital versions of these games is if you buy it on 360, you have to buy it again on Xbox One. Or if you buy it on PS3, you have to buy it again on PS4 and not re-download. You have to purchase it again. And that to me doesn't make any sense. You've already bought the game. You should be able to just, even if you have to deactivate it, yeah, it's on both. I'm not going to play it on the old one anymore. I'll deactivate it. I'll transfer the licensing rights to the new console. That's perfectly fine. But, I mean, backwards compatibility is something we've had for a long time. It hasn't been every console, because as I said, Nintendo, up until the Wii, has not had backwards compatibility on their home consoles. They have had it on a couple of their handheld consoles. The 3DS plays DS games, all the Game Boy games, all the newer Game Boy iterations came with the backwards compatibility to the previous versions, including Game Boy. But it did get a little sticky there sometimes. But as I said, it's been there since the days of Atari, and that goes all the way back to the early 80s. So that's over 30 years we've had this. But is it really important? Do we really still need backwards compatibility? I kind of think it would be a really good option to still have. But tell me what you think in the comments down below. Do you think backwards compatibility is a feature that you'd like to see on these consoles, even if it's just as a piece of add-on equipment that you put the disc in and it has all of the chipsets and it has extra processors, whatever they would need to make to be able to play all of your previous PlayStation or all of your Xbox games onto the newer consoles. Once again, tell me what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you around.